very few times are decisions made in the middle of the night in Las Vegas that are rational.
Well done. Great start.
I mean, that's
great start.
I mean,
or smart.
But
or
this
safe.
one does appear to be expected and understood and understandable, straight up. Yep. Despite it does come across as a little bit rash and harsh, and that is the firing of Josh McDaniels in Las Vegas, along with the general manager, Dave Ziegler, who was handpicked by McDaniels to come aboard with him when Mark Davis fired the interim head coach, Rich Bisaccia, or did not retain him. And my buddy Mike Mayock was fired as the general manager to bring in Patriots West. And Mark Davis and the Raiders Xing out, tweeting out, whatever you want to call it, a statement overnight saying that after much thought about what the Raiders need to move forward, I've decided to part ways with Josh and Dave. I want to thank them for both of their hard work and wish them and their families nothing but the best. That's from Mark Davis. And you saw it on Monday Night Football, a team that just couldn't score points, and that's what Josh McDaniels has been brought in to do. And a quarterback who can't find the all-world wide receiver who was brought in by McDaniels and Ziegler in their first big move together. The quarterback who was handpicked by these guys to find somebody like Davante Adams over and over again, had him twice for huge touchdowns and missed him. And Jimmy Garoppolo has looked brutal. And Derek Carr has 300-yard games in a row. And, I mean, I could go on and on and on. And Mark Davis looked at where things were going after handing the entire organization over to these two. Essentially saying, we're starting over here after they made the playoffs and not retaining Rich Bisaccia and sending Mike Mayock back to the media saying, let's reach into the Belichick system and go get this guy. Figuring that, like Belichick, it would be second time around better. We all know he was fired in the middle of the season, in the middle of year two, the last time he was coaching in the AFC West in Denver. And everybody who I know in the Raiders organization told me multiple times, over and over again, this is Josh's show. And they changed the entire culture of the building. Everything was done the way that Josh wanted it to be done and Dave Ziegler wanted it to be done. And that's understandable. If you're an owner, you hand things off to these guys, certainly if it's the Belichick way. And, you know, to be straight up with you, once again, we're left with the impression that the Belichick way doesn't work unless it's the Belichick guy doing it. And even this year, we all know what's going on in New England. And whatever's going on behind the scenes, as always, there is an iceberg in the NFL. And we, outside of buildings in the NFL, in our own worlds of viewing things on a screen, on your phone, on your mobile device, or however you take in your media these days, we only see the tip of the iceberg. We do. And last week, the Raiders had a full-on meeting of the minds, I guess, where they aired all the grievances. It was half a Festivus last week. And the feats of strength coming out of that airing of grievances was the Lions putting the bang thing on the Raiders on Monday night. And that, I guess, proved to be too much for Mark Davis. Certainly when he's looking at the results in this results-oriented business. The Raiders have a bottom three scoring and total offense in 2023. They're averaging 15.8 points a game in this quarterback-driven league. Honestly, the 15.8, that's the Dolphins have that many points in 2.5 drives. Total offense, they're 31st in 2023. These points per game and total offense, which is 268.3 yards per game, worst in a season for the Raiders since 2009. McDaniels had a top 8 scoring offense in 12 of his 13 seasons as the Patriots offensive coordinator. You could do the difference. One of those offenses had Brady as the quarterback. One of these offenses has Brady knocking on the door of ownership. The Raiders have scored fewer than 20 offensive points in all 8 games in 2023. That's the longest such streak to start the season since St. Louis and Washington did it in 2009. And I can tell you right now, that St. Louis offense was on turf, but there was no great show. The Raiders are last in the NFL with a turnover margin of -8. They've had a giveaway in all 8 games this year. They've had a giveaway in 15 straight games. The longest giveaway streak by the Raiders is 16 back in 2011-2012. Then there's Mr. Garoppolo, who you see on the screen right here. Clearly not himself. He looks hurt or shot, whichever way you want to view it. He leads the NFL with 9 interceptions in 2023, despite missing 2 games. He would be the 3rd player in Raiders history to lead the NFL in interceptions. Kerry Collins and Darryl LaMonica in 04 and 69, respectively. The Raiders lead the NFL with 30 interceptions since McDaniels came aboard. Garoppolo is having his worst season ever, and this is after the team signs him to a 3-year, $72.8 million deal that had to be pushed off in announcing because there was something going on with Garoppolo's foot that needed to be renegotiated apparently at the last second before it became official. And that's the guy that replaces their longtime quarterback, Derek Carr, who we all know Davante Adams in many ways chose Las Vegas as his post-Packers destination because he wanted to play with Derek Carr. Josh McDaniels and David Ziegler did not sign or did not give Josh Jacobs his 5th-year option pickup, instead playing him in a 3rd preseason game like he was a 3rd stringer. Jacobs winds up having the best rushing season of maybe anybody last year, certainly in terms of rushing yards. He was a rushing yards leader. That led to them having to franchise tag him. And a whole brouhaha that caused him to miss training camp. I could go on and on. So sometimes guys get bounced out of their gigs in the middle of a season, and you're like, that's too much. Or in the middle of year 2 of a 6-year contract, and you say that's too much. Because guys can turn it around. They can turn it around. I mean, just look at the way Dan Campbell started his Lions career as the head coach. And now look at him, right? But when it's a record that McDaniels has put up in his first year and a half with the decisions that he and his handpicked general manager have made, putting it all together with the results being 9-16. And some of those 16 were last year games where they blew a 20-0 halftime lead over the Cardinals, and Kyler Murray came back and won it for a team that went 3-12 the rest of the way in Arizona, losing to the Titans on a game-tying 2-pointer that failed. Then, of course, there is losing to Baker Mayfield and the Rams after Baker Mayfield had just gotten off a plane on a short week on a Thursday night. Oh, and there's the loss to a guy that had just gotten off a fishing boat who had never coached before, and Jeff Saturday, watching his iron deer in a front lawn that's now currently in a CBS booth, Matt Ryan run it for, I have it written down here, hold on a minute, 39-yard scramble for Matt Ryan. That is not anything that needs to be adjusted. Matt Ryan ran for 39 consecutive yards.
Consecutive.
Okay. That happened. That happened. Only when Jeff Saturday had as the interim head coach for Indianapolis. And one of the only wins for Josh McDaniels is when the receiver who McDaniels took in free agency this year, Jacoby Myers, threw a pass directly to Chandler Jones, whose history with the Raiders we don't really need to go into too in depth here, despite his huge contract that they gave him. That was a gimme win over New England, I might add. So, again, I could go on and on. So it is clear Mark Davis made what appears to be a clear-headed decision, despite, in this day and age, a year and a half, not usually enough to give a coach, certainly when hey, they're used to firing people there. And you know you don't want to keep turning things over. Antonio Pierce has been named as the interim head coach. He's the linebackers coach in Vegas for the last 2 years. He might be a familiar name to a lot of you, certainly in Washington and New York City. He played his first 4 years of his career from 01 to 04 with Washington, and then spent the final 5 years of his career with the Giants, including winning a championship over the aforementioned Brady and Patriots. He has 0 head coaching experience professionally and 0 experience coaching offense, which, as I've already established, is the main issue with these Raiders this year. The defense has tightened up, and the offense has been dreadful, and that's McDaniels' bailiwick. Pierce becomes the 13th different head coach and interim head coach for the Raiders since they last won a playoff game, which was the Super Bowl loss in 2002. No other team has had more than 11 head coaches since that time. So this franchise knows a ton of turnover, and one would think Davis doesn't want to eat 4 years plus of a contract, but he felt no choice but to do it. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.